Once you become a digital creator, they send you a check.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Portsmouth Coffee Talks Evening Edition Show. I'm James Lim Overton, and I'm here with host Leah Drake Stitt and guest host John Gans. Hello, host. How you doing?
Hello there. How are you?
How's everybody doing? Hold on, let
Doing
me let the.
well.
Looks like the Colonel is coming in here.
Okay.
Let him in. How you doing, Colonel?
Hello,
Hey, how
Colonel.
you doing?
How are you?
All right.
Good, good.
All right, the gang's all here. So we're here. We have a special guest with us this evening. We have the executive director, and if you see it up there on your screen where the executive is spelled wrong, I will correct that. But anyway, we know executive correct director of the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority, Alisa Saunders Winston.
Yes,
How you doing?
I am great. How are you?
How's everything?
Wonderful.
Well,
Good.
what we're gonna do, Leah's gonna start us off with the conversation, but I wanted to move my head here, and if you all can see uh, the guy up there behind me, a bit of history. That's
Oh,
my
yes.
dad,
That's
Judge James A.
Judge
Overton.
Overton.
And
Judge
the
Overton.
reason I have him back in the background, because he was one of the first blacks that was appointed to the Housing Authority way back when. So
Yeah.
it's a bit of history there. And that's why I kind of had him in the background there. But go ahead, Leah, start us off tonight with the
Well, I
conversation.
tell you, I am so pleased. I didn't want to miss this evening's show because I have with me my daughter from another mother. She's one of my daughters. She's one of my bonus daughters as well. She and her twin sister, Alina.
One of
So,
your many, many, many daughters.
many, many daughters, but I'm just so happy to be able to introduce to some and to remind others of our guest tonight, and that is none other than Miss Alisa Saunders Winston. Alisa is a graduate of IC Norcom High School. She went on to Hampton University, where she and my daughter were roommates, and then she went on to Norfolk State to get her advanced degree. Alina has served in Newport News as let me get it right now. She's as the development administrator at the Newport News Redevelopment and Housing Authority. She's also served as the assistant director of the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And recently she was appointed as the director of the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority. And we are just so proud of Alisa and her trajectory to the place where she is at this time. And we know that Alisa is going to do an amazing job as the director of the Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. So join me in welcoming Alisa Saunders Winston to Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And Alisa, I'm just happy to be here. I didn't want to miss this evening's show, but I'm not going to be here the whole show because I am at another function. I'm at the Friends of the Juvenile Courts Dinner with Friends program on tonight. But Alisa, it's so good to have you here on Portsmouth Coffee Talk. And I know my fellows are going to take great care of you in my absence.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, and I must mention that also Alisa was in Black Enterprise and also received a $50,000 check from Missy Elliott. So y'all have a lot to talk
The
about
Housing
this
Authority,
evening.
you sure did.
Y'all have a lot to talk about on Portsmouth Coffee Talk on this evening. So she's generating all this new energy in the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority. And we know that it's going to be, whatever she does is going to be successful. So welcome once again, Alisa, to Portsmouth Coffee Talk.
Thank you.
Alisa, and welcome again, and congratulations. It's just been about 2 months, maybe a couple of months. You were appointed, I guess. Does the board of directors appoint you or hire you as the executive director?
Yes, our board
Okay.
of directors appoints the executive director.
And as of October 1, you became the... executive director after being deputy director for years.
Yes, I was a deputy executive director for about 7
We're
years.
getting feedback,
Prior to
Jackie. We're
becoming
getting
executive.
feedback.
That's not me. That's somebody.
Okay.
Colonel, you on there twice. Okay. Okay. Alisa and Colonel will be back on soon as he gets them straight. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with the Housing Portsmouth Development, Redevelopment and Housing Authority, and we can go from there. Let us know a little bit about you and your time with us. And she had mentioned that you were with Newport News before, but
Yes.
you got wise and came home.
I came back home.
Came back home
Came
and
back
thought you would
home.
bring all your brilliance back to us, which is what we look for when we have our people that come through the public school system and then go to those great HBCUs and then bring all that knowledge back to us. So give us a
Yeah.
little bit of history about your relationship with the Portsmouth Redevelopment Housing Authority.
Okay. So yes, I was born and raised right here in Portsmouth, a graduate of the Ashley Norcom High School,
Yes,
class of
indeed.
1993. I'm so excited about that. So I've been in Portsmouth all of my life. I left Norcom and went to Hampton University to obtain my bachelor's degree, and after there, I furthered my education and went to Norfolk State and received a master's in urban affairs planning administration. So after I left Norfolk State, well, actually, while I was in Norfolk State in grad school, I was at Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And so housing just kind of fell in my lap. And so when I initially graduated college at Hampton University, we could not stay on our parents' insurance forever like we can now, 27, 28 years. So I needed a job with benefits with insurance. And so I lucked out and I found a job at social services, and I worked there for a year. And then I obtained a job at Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority in 1998. And there I was their resident services specialist. So I worked as a liaison between the residents of the Housing Authority and the administrative staff there. So I've been in housing since 1998. And while in Portsmouth, I obtained my master's, as I stated, from Norfolk State in urban planning and administration. And so I decided to leave Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing in 2005 and went to work in the city of Suffolk as a city planner. So I worked there for a number of years. And is there a feedback? Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you okay. I think, I
Okay.
don't know, I think that's Colonel trying to get back in, but
Oh, okay. So I worked as a city planner in Suffolk for a number of years. And I just had this desire and passion to go back to housing. Housing is where I wanted to be. This is a basic need that we provide in our community, and it's so important. And it takes the impact or the trajectory of many lives of our residents in our community. So I wanted to get back into housing. So after I left the City of Suffolk Planning Department, I also worked in Chesapeake in their Office of Housing. And then I left there and went to Newport News Housing Authority and served as their development administrator, where I oversaw the development of new construction of our existing housing rehabs and so forth. And so the opportunity presented itself for me to come back in 2016 as a deputy executive director, and that's where I've been ever since. So I'm glad to be back home. I'm glad to use my talents and my experience and my education here in my home.
wow, you really are bringing some experience back here. And when we had our pre-conversation, you mentioned something to me before you talk about your role and the role of the authority. You mentioned something to me about the history of the housing authority,
Yeah.
something that's pretty significant. Share that with
So
our.
Portsmouth
Excuse me,
Redevelopment and
Alina,
Housing.
Alina, before
Yes.
you get started, I apologize, people, but the program is about to start. I'm going to have to leave. Once again, I'm leaving you in capable hands, Alina. Take care, sweetheart. Alisa,
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 I
I
know
do it
what
all
you
the
meant.
time.
I'm used to
I know
it.
you're used to it now. Okay, guys, y'all have a good show.
That's my
Okay.
twin sister, Alina.
Okay.
Yes,
Love you
and
now.
she's been on the show as well. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Take care,
Okay.
Leah.
Okay. Bye bye.
So actually, Portsmouth Redevelopment and Housing Authority is the first housing authority in Virginia. We were created in 1938, and so our identifying number is VA001, hence the 001, because we are the first housing authority in Virginia.
Let me ask you something, and I know you want to go into the role and everything, but in 1938, and the Housing Authority was formed. Now, was it formed for a specific race? It was black and white, because I think Dale's home started out as a white neighborhood, if I'm not mistaken. Am I correct?
Yes, so it
So
was definitely providing affordable option housing for all races. Yeah.
right, and it just wasn't for that. I think it was during that time, where some of the buildings downtown was sort of bent, dilapidated, and the housing authority came in there and did some things and bought up some property. I think that came years later, bought up some property to sort of revitalize downtown. But just wanted to bring that up. But go ahead, talk about your role and the role of the authority.
So our main focus is to provide safe, decent, and affordable housing for the citizens of Portsmouth. And we do that through a number of ways. We work closely with HUD, which is our primary funder for our initiative is HUD. And then we get funds from the state as well. So we want to provide mixed income housing, affordable housing as well. There is a need in our community to provide affordable housing. We have a lot of teachers or police officers or city employees, who can't make, ends meet, and they can't afford the rents, especially today. You probably have seen basically with the result of the eviction moratorium, their increase in rent. So for instance, a 2-bedroom home may cost you $1,300 to $1,400, a month. And so that's, unaffordable for many of our families. And so most of our families do need subsidy, and that can be in the form of our housing. So we manage about 1,600 units here in Portsmouth. And so we also provide voucher assistance to another maybe 2,600 families as well. So we have a couple of ways that we can go about obtaining, affordable housing and meeting the needs of our community. So of course you have the hard brick and mortar and us building properties to meet that need, but also we provide options for our residents and our families to go out in the community to also find safe, decent, affordable housing. And that is through our Housing Choice Voucher Program, which many of our folks know as Section 8.
Yeah, and as you talk about Section 8, and a lot of people, and I think if the Colonel was here, he would bring this up about how certain factions in the government are trying to cut certain programs that are helping some of the people that might be low income or moderate income. But Section 8 is not necessarily, some people might think it's for people that are just sitting home collecting a check, but that's not the case. Because as we talk about working poor, there's a lot of people working every day, but they still need assistance, and just some of the basic things as housing. So Section 8 sort of fills that gap for those people. And it's not like some people might think, it's people that's just sitting down, collecting a check.
No, many of our families are working families, like you stated, they're the working poor, or, they're working every day, but find a struggle to be able to pay rent and utilities amongst their other bills that they're required to pay. So many of our families are working, and if they're not working, we have several programs in place that will help our families, obtain employment. We help our families go back to school, whether it's to get their GED or get their college education. We've had several families go on to universities. We provide scholarships for our youth. For the families to go on to college. So we create opportunities because we want our families to move out. I have another director that says we're one of the agencies we want our families to move on, because when they move on, that means they're doing it well and we have done our job. And so that's what we want to do. And so we want to provide them the resources that they can move on. Many of our families have purchased homes in the city. And so we have a home ownership program that we focus with our families. Those that want to obtain, home ownership. Those that want to get a skill or trade, work closely with the school system as well. And Opportunity Inc. is another one of our partners. So we have a lot of opportunities for our families. So yes, that is a misconception that our families, most of them are just sitting home, and not,
Especially with those programs that give the incentive for people to go to home ownership. It's not something, where you want to repeat that cycle.
Right.
You're giving people incentives, and you have a lot of success stories where people have come out of that Section 8 or those subsidized housing into home ownership. So
a lot of success stories we have.
Right.
Yeah.
Look, I want to introduce you to John Gantz up there, and the reason he's from this area, but he lives in Texas now. And when I knew you were coming, I asked him about Texas, because the housing authorities are all over, and I wanted to know if Texas, as big a state as it is, did they have a housing authority as well? And he told me they did, and I wanted him to sort of make some comparisons about Texas and Virginia's housing authorities. So just wanted to make sure you knew why he was sitting up there in the block.
Why is this man just sitting up there looking at y'all like he's crazy? Yes. Alicia, I would like you to take the opportunity to dispel a lot of myths that are out there, a number of the myths, especially when they use the word is used, Section 8. That has a negative connotation to it. Also, there's issues that there are myths that housing is substandard when you're talking about that type of housing, or even the voucher system, or that the housing or the people that move into Section 8 housing or subsidized housing will cause the residents who already have houses in the area, their property taxes to go up. Myths like that. How do you address those, or could you address those with force?
Sure. So our housing is not substandard. And so those that participate in, like I said, formerly called Section 8, we do, because that is a negative term. So we now say housing choice voucher, and it just provides, options for our families. But anytime a landlord wants to participate in our program, okay, they have to go through a series of inspections. And so what is called a housing quality standard inspection. HQS is what we call it for a short term. And so we make sure that our residents are placed in decent and safe homes. So we inspect the property before we allow our families to move in, to ensure that they are not living in dilapidated or derelict conditions. And so we inspect the units. And then we also, once they move in, and then we also inspect the units annually. Now, if a resident has some concerns, then we can do special inspections. So throughout the year, if they call and say, my heat's not working, I've contacted my landlord and it's been a week and he's done nothing, we're going to come out, okay? And we're going to intervene on behalf of the residents. And so we're not going to pay that landlord if they're not doing right by our clients.
Yeah, when Sim and I were first talking about you coming on board, I told him I would go research a lot of information, because here that word subsidized housings, if you say housing, it's automatically a negative connotation here. Crime rates are going to go up. Bad people are going to come on board, but there's no statistical analysis that I was able to find. And I pulled up the Princeton review. I even pulled up the Virginia reviews on it. I couldn't find anything that justified the negative connotations that go with trying to give an advancement for people to get housing, or the working class people to get housing. And I think, Slim, we were talking about, was it Ida Barber or Academy Park that we knew I don't want to date ourselves because we're a little bit older than you. But
you're dating me too. So I'm with Ida Barber and Jeffrey Wilson.
And the Colonel there. But those areas were built they weren't built for us, but they were built for people that came back from the war that could not afford housing.
Correct.
And then they eventually got handed down, or as those people moved up. So then we took it over. Then, of course, as we moved out, other people moved in. So that's what that was my biggest concern here. The negative connotation is, I just heard it at a meeting probably a month ago. They're moving in, they're making some new houses, and the first thing you hear people say is, "There go our property values," and there was no correlation to that. That our property values were going to go down, crime was going to be raised up, and it was going to be substandard housing. Actually, the correlation was that these people work and put money into the community, so the tax rates are still the same. The housing is just the same. It meets the same standard. And I think that needs to be put out there more in the public, because the public doesn't know that.
I agree. I certainly agree. And I've received calls myself as well, from the community members, or they would think, this is a Section 8 house, or a housing towards voucher house. And, I can't disclose that information, but I will check just to see. And 9 times out of 10, is not one of our residents, housing towards voucher residents in that property. And I'll tell you that for a couple of reasons. That our residents know that if they don't take care of the property, if they're evicted by the landlord, they will lose their voucher. And in this day and time, a voucher is like gold. So they're not going to put themselves or their housing in jeopardy. And so, normally it's not an issue for our residents. They take care of the property. If the landlord, goes to court and gets, judgment in possession for, let's say damages to property, they will lose their voucher in cases like that. And so they don't want that to happen. Or, and so most of the time our residents do right. They follow the rules. They know the rules. We let them know the rules, and they follow the rules.
Yeah, Alisa, I know Colonel wants to get in there because he was one of those landowners that had Section 8 people. But I can say this: I used to be a realtor, and when you talk about some of the Section 8 people, that the perception of they might come in there, and it might be beyond perception. They might come in there and not treat the home as well as others. Being a realtor, I've seen renters do the same thing. That were not,
it's
Section 8. So it's always exceptions to the rule. And I don't know what the percentages are against just plain renters, who does the most damage. But, you don't need but a few examples in certain situations in order for that to happen. But Colonel, go ahead. You being a firsthand, you were someone that has properties that had your property as parts of Section 8.
Yeah. So, Alicia,
Hi.
first I got to say is, the 3 guys on this on that are on the scope now are we don't want to carbon date ourselves by saying how old we are. So we'll go there too. And then secondly, I'll say, yes, I too am a Hampton graduate and a Norfolk State graduate. So I'm there with you. And as Slim says, yes, I have and continue to be. It's been a long, maybe over 4 decades of a landlord that is rented to all types of folks in my properties. But I do have one question. The first question I have, and it's regarding Section 8 housing and the funding of it. What percentage of that comes from HUD or the feds and from the state? And is that money and I say it is at risk because I already know that on the federal side, the Republicans or the Confederates want to cut that out and actually eliminate that.
Right. So our funding for our HCV program, Section 8 program, is funded through HUD. Okay.
Which is federal program.
Yes, that is correct. That is a federal program. Yes.
So if they have their way and they cut or eliminate it or cut it down, what's the effect of that family that's living out there on Section 8?
Oh, that's going to be a big impact, in our community. I definitely think it would affect us negatively. And we're going to have a lot of homeless, persons on the street, families on the street. So we need to make sure at all costs that doesn't happen. And so I am definitely a part of advocacy groups. I work with VACADO, which is a Virginia Association of Housing and Community Development Officials. And we have lobbyists on our behalf as well, because we want to make sure that does not happen, not to Portsmouth or any other community.
So you mentioned that we don't want to make that happen.
Mhm.
So how do you not make that happen if you don't go to the polls?
You got to go to the polls. You got to go to the polls. You have to go to the polls. And, recently, I would say within the last 2 years that we have seen an increase, fortunately, in our Section 8 funding for our program. So it's went up substantially. We've had an increase in our funding for our veterans programs as well. So we have an allocation of vouchers for veterans as well. So we definitely need people to go to the polls. We need to keep, politicians in place who see the benefit and needs of housing.
Elections matter.
Oh, elections definitely matter.
And don't you have programs or people come into the housing that you all manage as far as voter registration and something like that?
So yes, we do allow voter registration, for our residents. We want all of our residents to be registered voters. We also work with programs to restore our rights of our felons in our programs. We believe every vote counts and every vote matters. And so if you are able to vote and can and have your rights restored, we want to help you do that as well.
So you mentioned the increase in funding over the last two. So do you think there's a correlation, being a graduate of two different excellent HBC schools, correlation? So since the Democrats took over the presidency, you see there is a correlation in increased funding for Section 8 housing versus under the last would-be dictator for the last 4 years that wants to return and destroy our democracy. Do you see there is a correlation in there?
I could see that.
Yes, very politically put. Yes. So the other thing I'd like to say, yes, when we talk about restoration of rights and registering to people to vote, does it make is there a correlation of those who sit home and they're registered, and does it affect on an election? Because you could be registered and sit home watching Oprah. What does that do to you?
We need you to get out and vote. So, like you said, it's important for you to be a registered voter, but it's also more important for you to vote, But we need to get you to the polls. So absolutely.
Yes. So the other piece is, as a statistics piece, is we look at subsidized housing. Who is the recipient of what race is the majority of the benefits of those kind of programs? Who they help the most?
I would.
What's the breakdown?
On the national level, I don't have that statistical data. I could do some research and find out for you. But, of course, in Portsmouth, it would be predominantly African-American single mothers.
Mm-hmm. Just because that's the geographic of this place.
And national, yes, I would have to let you know what that is.
Yeah, nationally, I think I read the statistics, more white folks than us. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's always played by the news media is that we're 99.9 of those folks that are getting it. Over nationally, more white folks living in the trailer parks or whatever, I hate to say that, are getting most of those benefits. So, but I won't digress to that. So I know you talked about the voucher program. One of the effects of decreased funding, especially since they've taken over, the crazies have taken over the House, and then they decrease the amount of funding from HUD to these municipalities. So you see the cost share go up. Is that how it works?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
The resident cost share goes up when I start cutting funding, because I hear that from the residents that I rent to.
Right. So our residents pay 30% of their income towards housing right now. So yes, that could potentially change if it impacted the funding.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good.
Yeah. Colonel, you finish? Go ahead, Colonel.
Well, here's the other thing. You talked about the inspections of the housing, and those inspecting in my part what I've had, in my house when I rented to Section 8. Yes, they were inspecting my housing, but when the inspector came, they didn't inspect anything that the resident was doing to my property. That's the thing I have. And so what is there for the landlord other than to collect this? And I could rent by Section 8. I could get more money using Section 8 housing and getting all this free money, and the only thing I have to do is get a 1099 at the end of the year. But when I do have them move out, either eviction or not renewing their lease, it takes me 3 months to, in my case, and I have other friends, it takes us 3 months to repair the place. And when I have the inspection, the inspector won't even say anything to that resident that doesn't even own a broom.
So I will say this, as a landlord, you have the right to screen your tenants. So
yes,
another
screen on the way in, yes,
but
once they're in,
yeah,
they're in, that's my problem.
Right. So you can contact, our HCV department if you're having issues with a tenant and, with damages, and you can charge for damages. You can charge whatever it costs for you to fix, that screen door that was broken or the damage to your floor. You charge the residents. And so that's also another misconception, that you can't charge Section 8 residents. You certainly can charge Section 8 residents.
Yeah, but that's getting blood out of a turnip. I charge on the way out. And yes, I take them down to court and they may not get a tax return. But if you do your tax returns, if they're working, then I just make sure I don't have any money taken out of my taxes, and you never get your money back.
Well, you don't have to wait until they leave to charge them damages. So you can charge them damages prior to them leaving. So you can do that.
We got the deposit, but my
so
experience is it's been more than the deposit. That's one reason I left the program myself, to tell you the truth. I just never will do it again. I've had properties, and I would personally, I've left properties empty for 6 months till I get the right tenant, rather than taking the free money.
Right.
Yes.
So I would say this is that, again, screen your tenants just like you would do.
I always do. Yes.
Residents, screen your tenants. Do landlord references, check with their previous landlord. That would give you a good, indicator if they're a good tenant or not. So I don't want you to feel as a landlord, you have to lessen your criteria for our residents. That's not what we're asking you to do. But there are some remedies in place if you are not made whole or damages to your apartment. So if you need to charge, for the security deposit, 2 times the rent, because 1 time is not, if your rent is, let's say, $1,800 a month, and you feel like you may have damages in excess and you need a, $3,600 a month security deposit, you have that right to charge that as a security deposit. So you want to make sure that, you're not, cutting yourself, short. And so I would love to have, as many landlords in our property as possible. So I would love to have you come back, but also we're going to, if you don't mind, I would tell you that and I pulled this out because I know we're going to be talking about the Housing Choice Voucher Program, is that on Tuesday, December the 12th at 10 a.m., we're going to have a landlord workshop for those that are interested in becoming landlords in our program. That will be at the Battery Golf Course, and it'll be at 10 a.m. So if you're interested in becoming a landlord in the Housing Choice Voucher Program, please come. We will answer all of your questions. We will go through the inspection process. We'll go through the tenant responsibilities, the landlord responsibilities, security deposits, what a HAP contract is, and those type of things. So please come out. And Mr. Overton, I'll get you a flyer too if you want to share on your podcast as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Alisa, I want to ask you about the replacements like Alabama, Jeffrey Wilson, and Lincoln Park. And they were all, I think, or most of them were achieved through Hope 6 grants. And I think Portsmouth was fortunate enough to get 2 or 3 Hope 6 grants, which was kind of unusual for one locality to get that, to qualify for that many Hope 6 grants. Yeah. So when they changed over and you got Westbury out of Baba, you got Seaboard Square out of Jeffrey Wilson, and what's the name of the replacement for Lincoln Park?
Lexington Place.
So what was the main difference? Because you have a combination. What's one thing I know is different. You have a combination of you had to have a certain percentage because government funds were used for subsidized and then ownership and then rent. Am I correct there?
That
That
is
the main
correct.
difference?
And so, while yes, we were awarded two Hope 60 grants, which
Two.
was
Okay.
definitely a benefit to the city of Portsmouth. Hope 6 is not around, unfortunately, any longer. And it was definitely the resource that we needed to get those projects done and create, mixed income communities, mixed use communities. And when I say that, I mean a mixture of multi-family housing as well as single family. With Westbury, we have homeownership units and we also have rental units. And so HUD has focused on, in the last, I would probably say 10 years or so, on the deconcentration of poverty. So you will no longer see those traditional public housing where you see 400 and 600, 700, 800, units like you did in Jeffrey Wilson or Ada Barbara. So we're building much smaller communities now back, and we're looking at mixed income. So, you have some that are lower and then you have some in higher income. So a lot of folks don't know that what we call in our communities, many of our residents pay flat rent as well, which means that they are paying full rent to live there, and because they're a higher income, because we need that balance in our communities.
What is the percentage?
I don't want to tell you wrong, but I could find out for you. But we have quite a few that are what we consider are paying full rent in our communities.
Yeah, when the subsidized, when I build, say, for instance, we'll say a round number of 100 units, and we talked about that grant, the 3 grants, and they say they want to build 100 units for that such and such grants. How many of those or thereabout that will have to have subsidized housing versus full housing or partial, whatever? Third, or is it 90-10 or 95?
Well, it just depends on many of these applications or properties are funded, again, with HUD money as well as tax credit funds. And so it just depends on how you write your proposal or how you're going to, identify that, percentage in your grant application. You have to spell it out in your grant application. Okay. So maybe 20% of the families would be at this income level, 50% would be at that income level. So it's up to each locality and each, housing authority of how they're going to, develop a plan, because it's not a one size fit all. It's based on the community needs. So I
You have
do
somebody in your office you have somebody in your office is writing these grants.
We use a grant writer on occasion, but we also have a lot of staff that can write internally that will write our grants as well. Okay. And we work with development partners as well on some of these projects. So we use a mixture.
Ms. Winston, do you find any resistance to people using your services in the city of Portsmouth? I mean, you go out, you want to go. Do you target areas that you want to have housing put into or have people put into, and find resistance from the community?
There's always going to be resistance, and I think that's because we have to educate, folks, right, on our working poor and what that means. And so you may have heard the term NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And so I've worked in many localities, and we've all faced it in every locality that I've been in. So you will have that until they truly understand what workforce housing is. You're going to have that. So we have to do a better job of communicating and educating our community on what that is. A lot of our residents in our community, let's say teachers, will meet the income requirements to live in our housing. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Your public utility workers, your secretaries, your assistants, they meet the income limits to live in our house. Those are who we're talking about here.
Yeah, the middle class that you always hear politicians say they want to work for, but then when the middle class, or they'll tell you pull yourself up by your bootstraps or whatever their wordage is of that day or that era. And then you find things like this where, we'd like you to do that. We love our teachers, but guess what? We're not going to pay them enough money to live over here, and we're not going to allow them to live here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to ask you, Alisa, since the city council, I guess the state charter gives the city council a right to appoint the board members, and that can get kind of political, except for that one position where it has to be a residence, has to be a residence of one of the housing complexes.
Mhm.
How much does the city contribute? Do you know, as far as funds? I guess most of it comes from the government.
Well, the city has contributed to many of our projects. You know, they contributed to Westbury project with the former Ida Barber, Jeffrey Wilson projects. They've committed funds, or they provided funds for Lexington. They've also committed funds for Lexington seniors, which we're going to start construction in January. And we were also funded by the city for a senior rehab program, which these are seniors that live in our community to assist them in rehabbing their homes.
Yeah, the reason I asked that because the city probably has, or the council has, complete authority to turn you down if you want to present, a project to them. And I was just wondering how much they contribute as opposed to the federal government. Could the federal government override them if they see a project that you all are trying to do that is probably in the best interest?
Well, yeah, HUD is primarily, I funded, so,
But the
they
city
kind of
has the
dictate,
main authority.
yeah, they dictate,
Yeah.
yeah. But we can and cannot do. So they write the rules, they tell us what we can and cannot do. So, yes.
So, and I said that also to say, well, citizens watching, if you look at something that the authority is trying to do and you think it's in your best interest, you are the people that can go to the city council and make a difference there, because they're the ones that you elect there. But if you sit back and don't say anything, because I saw a project that I thought might be good that came up not too long ago, and the city turned it down. And I didn't hear any really good reasoning to do that, but I guess they did. They are the city council, but it was no citizens there to, sort of speak up for the project. So I guess you have to get a little better in getting that word out of what you all are doing or the project that you're proposing.
Right.
I like to rehash. You mentioned the Hope 6 project or funding. So why did that go away? And was it just disappeared, or was it wasn't refunded?
Well, it just wasn't appropriated by Congress, funds. So they give us funds and they take it away.
There you go, Colonel.
We had a drug elimination grant, which one time provided officers for police officers in all our communities. If you're familiar with that, they took that away. So, I mean,
happened in the last 2 years.
Package it, put a bow on it, and call it something else, and then sometimes it's just a gap that you have to fill. You
got to remember, at one point in time, they had a neurosurgeon in charge of housing, and a wrestling lady in charge of some other stuff. So come on, let's be serious. I mean, I'm just calling it as it is. That's what they did.
That can make a difference too.
He didn't get health; he got housing because he was black. And he got housing. They thought black housing went together, and that's my look at it. So yeah.
And you had a great program for housing that right now it's no funds for, where people could get roofs. Or at one time, I remember you could go to the housing authority for that if you met the criteria. And just last year, a couple of years ago, you all were replacing windows for people that qualified for that, and I think those funds have dried up at the moment.
Yes.
But talk about, I mean, it's a lot of other things that you all do that I think a lot of citizens don't know that you do. You mentioned something about the scholarships, but can you name some of the other things that you're doing? I think you have a complex for veterans.
Yes. So, we have we have BASH vouchers. So we get vouchers from HUD to house our veterans, and those referrals come from the VA. They come directly from the VA to us. So if we have a veteran that says they want to live in Portsmouth, then they send them over to us, and then we'll get them housed. So that is a program that's available for for our veterans. We also have what we call family unification vouchers, and those assist families that are at risk of going into foster care. So, for instance, if you have families who could potentially lose their children just because they don't have a place to stay, then we work with and get referrals from social services for those programs as well. I'm trying to think of some others. We work closely with the city Parks and Rec. They now currently provide after-school programs for our youth in our communities. And Swanson, formerly Swanson Homes, we're in the process of, demolishing that, or soon we'll be demolishing Swanson Homes.
And that was the oldest one, like,
Yes.
well, one of those, 1941.
Yeah, Dale Home is our oldest one.
Dale Home is the oldest, yeah.
Yeah, Dale Home is the oldest. So we're
Right.
looking to do something similar to Swanson Homes that we did with Westbury. So we provide home ownership courses and programs for our residents. And one of the benefits of being in our, what I call our family self-sufficiency program or resident services program. So we have a resident that comes in our program, and let's say they are not working, and we get them trained and they go to school, and then they start getting a job. And of course, now they're paying rent. So with the family self-sufficiency program, that increase in rent will be deposited into an escrow account for our residents, so they could use for future goals, including home ownership. So that's one of the main benefits that's for participating in our family self-sufficiency program, that will allow them that tool to have that resource, to further their education, to purchase a home, to purchase a car, to maybe rent on a business if they're looking to own their own business and that type of thing. We do entrepreneurship classes. We have a trades program, a carpentry program that we had in Dale's Home that we're working with. So we have a lot of great things, going on in our communities.
Is there anything for homelessness?
So we don't have any resources per se at the Housing Authority for homeless. So you have to go through our continuum of care. So the city has one, is through our continuum of care, and we'll partner with them, and they will assist the families through their regional housing hotline and task force to work with the families on getting them housing.
Excellent.
Johnny mentioned the neurosurgeon used to be the HUD chief, and I would tell you, during his confirmation, he didn't know the difference between Section 8 and where he was supposed to sit at the baseball game. He thought they were one in the same Section 8 seat, such and such. As I'll digress from there. So the other piece is, if you look at city council, do you look at who would be your main advocate for this in the city, on the city council? One that would say, and I know one of the people that sits on the city council says, I am the champion of the what he calls it, the poor, or I'm a champion of the hood. Do you have a advocate that stands up and stands on the table and advocates for better housing? Could you say?
I would like to think that all our council supports affordable housing.
That is a very politically correct answer.
Yeah, and that's something she would answer. I think questions like that, Colonel, probably would go to with those board members that are appointed by council and that actually make policy.
Yeah, that's true. That's politically correct. I'd rather for you to say, I just can't answer that question.
Don't put her on the spot.
I ain't gonna put you on the spot.
We want her to stay where she is.
Yeah, stay where you are.
Something else you didn't mention as far as businesses, I think I couldn't find it, but the Housing Authority either develop or a partnership with a development company, LLC, where they do some things. I think the Wendy's and also the Walmart was a part of a coalition of different groups, the Housing Authority, the EDA, and some other groups, the Greater something of Portsmouth, that came together to develop businesses in the city of Portsmouth.
So we do have a redevelopment. Not all housing authorities are redevelopment and housing authorities. We are a redevelopment and housing authorities. so we can do outside of our normal just building, housing for our residents. So we have worked with the city on projects such as acquiring the properties for the Parkview Elementary School, the Wendy's on London, the Mid-City Corridor. That was primarily the Housing Authority role in making sure that happened. So we've done a lot of development in the city and not just housing development.
Do you all have an inventory of properties at this moment?
Do we have any inventory?
Right.
We have very
I was
limited
just curious.
inventory now. And our available properties are listed on our website. And so if you go to our www.prha.org, you'll see available properties that we have now. So we're always looking for property to develop housing on. So that is something that, we're actively seeking. The properties that we have available for sale are usually either commercial or not large enough for us to build, multifamily housing on.
And we're approaching the 8 o'clock hour, and maybe you can get out of the hot seat, but you've handled yourself well.
Thank you.
You come up with this group, you're going to get some questions that I think a lot of people might be asking anyway. But I want to bring this up, and this is, a hot topic as far as when people talk about crime in the city of Portsmouth, and they might look in some of them areas, especially before they tore down certain areas, and I think it got better, but, history will tell you anytime you get a large density of people and put them, pack them all in one area, you're going to create some sort of criminal elements out of that. But I know at one time the housing authority had their own security force. Do they still have that now? You have to depend on the police department to help you all out in those areas.
So at one time, and this was years in the 90s, we had the drug elimination grant, which is now gone away. And so we have
Something else going away.
Yeah, we have outsourced so we do have security officers on our properties. And so we do fund that. That has to come from our funds. That doesn't come from HUD federal funds. And so we realize that the police department is at a deficit. And so we have hired security officers for our properties as well. We work very closely with the police department. They have access to our cameras. They can see what we can see, and they've been instrumental. The city has actually funded the cameras in some of our communities, and so has been a very good resource in allowing the police to solve crimes on our properties. So we're thankful for those resources that we have, and we'll continue to work with the police until they have a full staff.
Are they armed or unarmed?
They're armed.
Armed?
Yes.
What's the liability if they actually?
Thomas.
They have to cover they have to have the appropriate training and insurance requirements.
You will provide the insurance, or
they have to provide the insurance.
Okay. What's the liability limits?
I don't know offhand what they are. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to take an opportunity to go ahead and give out that. First, I want to say thank you. And that NIMBY not in my backyard. I appreciate that. I wrote that down. You can believe I'm gonna be using that down the street in a few weeks again. But your website again. So if anybody has any questions or concerns, they can get in touch with you again.
Yes, you can go to www.prha.org.
ORG. Okay.
Yes, ORG.
I couldn't get it.
And, and the landlord workshop, December the 12th, 10 a.m. at Battery. That's on a Tuesday.
Is that something that's usually well attended?
We haven't had one in about 2 years, but it's usually well attended.
Thomas will be there.
We need we need landlords. So if you know anybody, even if you don't want to put your property on our program, but if you know of someone, just come out and we'll answer any question, that they may have,
Yes.
and hopefully they will end up putting the property in our program. But if not, then we have at least answered their questions.
Awesome. Well, I know we're winding down, but I'd like to thank you for coming on and feeling the heat.
You're welcome.
And I know Johnny was not fair to you, so I was the only one being fair to you. So
Oh,
Slim
check him
was
out.
not fair to you. Both of them two up there, they ain't fair to you. But
Yeah.
We
What
appreciate
we're gonna do with him, cuz?
Well, it's been a pleasure.
Anyway, we really want to thank you, and we appreciate you coming up here and answering our questions. And a lot of times when people come up with the questions we ask are questions that we have heard from other people.
Yes.
And we just present them, or questions that we might have had, personally. And thanks for coming, and you answered every question that we threw at you. And I think whoever's watching might have a better understanding what the housing authority is all about, even though you've been around a long time, but people still might not know all the things that you offer. And hopefully they also know that elections have consequences in a lot of areas, and even the housing authority. And when we talk about funds and fundings that need to continue with some of the projects, some of the programs that you all used to have, and the ones that you still have, we want to make sure that they continue. So make sure you pay attention to what's going on, and make sure you let your legislators know, where they need to be putting their votes and where funding needs to come. And funding doesn't need to stop, because it's doing some good things, and it's not creating a cycle for people to continue what they're doing. It's trying to encourage people, like you said, into home ownership eventually. And that is the goal, So we want to thank you again for coming on, and hopefully you'll come back and give periodically and give us updates of what's going on. Anytime some new projects come up or new programs that are of interest, that might be of interest to the community, please feel free to come back.
I sure
And
will.
congratulations again. And,
Thank you.
Congratulations.
I guess you have to fill that deputy position now. Huh? I'm looking
we have
for
some positions we have to fill.
Who does that? Do
Thank
you
you.
feel that, or does the board feel that?
I feel that.
Oh, okay. All right. All right.
Thank you. You
Any
all
other
have a
last
great-
comments from the host, or did you have any last comments, Ms. Winston? No. Did you have any last comments?
Me?
No. Alisa.
Oh, did I? I'm sorry. No. Just thank you all. It's been a pleasure.
Okay. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Yep.
And
Thanks
take
again.
everybody, and remember to always be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. And make sure you always remember to get out there and vote, even though it's not a voting season right now. But we're going to always remind you to do that. And if you're not voting, make sure you get out there and register, or educate yourself on the issues and what's really going on out there before you get out there, so you can make some informed decisions.
Yes.
Take care, everybody. We appreciate you.
Bye-bye.
All right,
Bye-bye.
fellas. See you next time.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Go Cowboys.
All right. That's
Yep.
it.
Get rid of watching right now.